Privyet. Hello everyone. You're on the Slavic News Channel, and in this video, we'll discuss the most significant updates on the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. We have a lot of interesting updates, so let's begin. The Russians continue bombing and attacking the village by the name of Lipetsk and Kharkiv itself, the capital of the region, with FABs. The Russians, according to this video, were bombing this territory with FAB-500 or maybe FAB-250, but not with FAB-3000. As for Kharkiv, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians attacked the city with FAB as well. There were very heavy explosions, some buildings were destroyed, and some concentrations of Ukrainian forces were damaged. According to the information we have, for example, in this video, we can see how the Russians attacked a hospital inside Kharkiv. This hospital was where the Ukrainians were recovering soldiers who were wounded during the battle for Glyaboko in the Kharkiv direction. As for Glyaboko, as you can see, we have adjusted the map. We have colored the territory between Lipetsk itself and Glyaboko in yellow color. We still haven't received any updates regarding this part, whether the Ukrainians managed to establish control over this territory or not, but we have confirmations of control by the Ukrainians in this area. For example, in this video, we can see how the Russians managed to discover the Ukrainian BTR-4, and that Ukrainian BTR-4 entered the minefields and was destroyed. Later, the official sources of the group of forces north reported that there were attempts to counterattack from the Ukrainian side with a small, limited group of forces, up to 15 soldiers, and some armored vehicles. As a result of those Ukrainian attempts, the Ukrainians lost soldiers. Now let's move to the Volchansk direction. We have additional updates from this area as well. According to different mappers, the Ukrainians did manage to enter the village by the name of Staritsa and restore control over some buildings. As for Volchansk, there are not so many updates from this territory. The Russians continue bombing and attacking the main citadel, the main Ukrainian stronghold in the central part of the town, with very heavy explosions. The Russians were bombing this territory with self-defense systems, yet the Russians haven't started using FAB-3000 in this direction. We haven't received almost anything about the most southern part of North Volchansk, as well as about the territory between eastern Volchansk and the village by the name of Tika. The only report we have is that during the previous night, the Ukrainians made many attempts to send additional reinforcements from the southern part to the northern part. Those attempts were, let's say, thwarted by the Russians, and the Ukrainians were forced to fall back. Also, we have a report that Ukrainians, more precisely the 3rd Battalion of the 36th Marine Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, have lost its combat capabilities. Currently, the Ukrainians removed this battalion somewhere inside mainland Ukraine for restoration. Very heavy clashes are currently occurring, not just clashes but very heavy artillery preparations and strikes from the Russian side. In the far east, in the eastern part of Volchansk, we have additional FAB strikes, top flank traverse strikes, and artillery strikes. It's not something like artillery preparation from the Russian side before the beginning of an offensive operation. These are attacks on Ukrainian supply roads and the concentration of Ukrainian forces before a possible Ukrainian counterattack or counteroffensive in this direction. According to the information we have, the Ukrainians are about to begin their greatest counteroffensive in the Kharkiv direction to restore control over the villages and territories around Glyaboko and Volchansk. They may have plans to enter the territory of the Russian Federation and get as close as possible to Belgorod, aiming to start bombing and attacking the capital of the Belgorod region, as the Russians are currently bombing Kharkiv. Now let's move further north to the Kupiansk direction. We have a lot of very interesting updates from the line between Peshchana and Stelmakovka. According to Russian sources, the Russians entered Stelmakovka and continue clearing this village. For now, we don't have any geolocations confirming this. We have just one geolocation showing how the Russians managed to discover a Ukrainian mortar position, and as a result of an artillery strike, that mortar position was destroyed. Other Russian sources reported continuous clearing operations inside Peshchana. The Russians published a significant number of geolocations, most of which are located in the northern part of the river named Peshchana. This river and these positions are what the Russians managed to destroy, including FPV drone operators, mortar positions, artillery positions, warehouses, and local ammo depots. This confirms that the Russians are attacking Peshchana from the southeastern direction. According to the information we have, the Russians are clearing the territory and are about to capture everything in the southern part of this river named Peshchana. The Russians haven't entered the northern part yet, but they are dealing significant damage to the Ukrainian forces and positions on this side. Now let's move further in the Siversk direction. We haven't received many updates, just regular activity from the Russian side. More interesting updates are coming from the southwestern Siversk direction from the line between Zeleznyanskaya, Bondarnaya, Kremovka, and Vasyukovka. Starting probably 2 weeks ago, the Russians began publishing a significant number of updates and reports from the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation. They reported significant damage to Ukrainian forces, publishing numerous geolocations confirming Russian counter-artillery duels and attacks on Ukrainian tank positions and FPV drone positions. The increase in updates since the beginning of the month indicates that the Russians are getting more concentrated, suggesting they might have plans in this area to attack Slavyansk or even Siversk from behind. As for Chasiv Yar, we have additional updates. According to different Russian sources, the Russians established complete control over the forest between Kalinovka and the eastern Chasiv Yar. The Russian military expert Ribier confirmed control over the southern part of the railways to the eastern Chasiv Yar. Today, Ukrainian sources published a video showing Russian soldiers moving through the industrial zone along the railways. In this video, we can see a Ukrainian drone flying above the territory, trying to discover Russian positions and coordinate Ukrainian artillery forces and FPV drone strikes. At one point, we see Russian infantry moving from one building to another, confirming Russian control over this territory. We haven't received any geolocations confirming control over the northern part yet, but we believe updates will soon confirm Russian progress in this area. The Russians continue their offensive operations between Ivanovskaya and Gorlovka-Toretsk with very heavy clashes. Let's discuss this operation in detail. First, additional updates from villages and towns like Shumy, Maersk, Druzhba, Pevnikny, Pevdeny, and Toretsk itself. Yesterday morning, the Russian armed forces captured Shumy and improved their positions from Maersk along the railways, reaching the outskirts of a small landfill, a crucial point. During the previous 24 hours, we got more updates from different sources. Neutral mappers reported that the Russians captured everything, including the landfill, fortifications, and reached the forest. Pro-Russian sources confirmed this, adding that the Russians entered the first streets of Pevnikny and are trying to dig in deeper on Muru Street and Kievskaya Street. For now, we haven't received geolocations or videos confirming this progress, but we expect updates soon. Understanding the Russian plans is essential. Based on previous Ukrainian defense experiences in towns like Krasnogorovka, Volchansk, and eastern Chasiv Yar, we identified high-rise building areas inside the Toretsk agglomeration as potential strongholds. The main Ukrainian defense belt likely goes along these citadels, indicating that the Russians might bypass these strongholds, moving northwest towards Druzhba and aiming to collapse Ukrainian forces in the fields between Alexander Schultz, Nebelagra, and the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal. Summarizing, the Russians likely aim to capture territory, forcing Ukrainians to fall back. This progress could allow the Russians to move along the railways, reaching a distance for artillery strikes on main Ukrainian supply roads from Konstantinovka to Toretsk. These strikes could significantly impact Ukrainian forces. Moving to Avdiivka, the Russians reported significant progress, entering the town and making substantial gains. This move supports their strategy to create a cauldron, isolating Ukrainian forces and establishing control over strategic supply routes. In Robotyno, the Russians restored control over key fortifications, likely regaining control over the area or keeping it in the gray zone. The greatest Ukrainian counterattack is anticipated in the Zaporizhzhia area, targeting the line between Kamianskoye and Vasilyevka to reach the Zaporizhzhia power plant. Lastly, we received additional videos of FAB-3000 strikes in Kharkiv, though the exact locations are still unknown. We're on the verge of significant developments in Ukraine, with concentrated forces in Zaporizhzhia and Kharkiv, and ongoing Russian attacks along the combat line. This concludes our update. Slavic News Channel condemns any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. Have a great day. Goodbye.